Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our I.C.E podcast. I.C.E stands for Inspire, Collaborate, and Encourage. Oh, I might have started speaking too soon, so let's start over. Welcome, everyone, to our I.C.E podcast. I.C.E stands for Inspire, Collaborate, and Encourage, and is the brainchild of Tanya J. Deutscher. This is a weekly podcast that we will typically host live, but also have the ability for replay for on our I.C.E Facebook page and our I.C.E YouTube channel. Each week, we interview a guest or guests that we felt had an interesting story to tell about our three key words: inspire, collaborate, and encourage. During this most recent stay-at-home orders of the COVID-19 virus, both Tanya and I found comfort and knowledge in others. The podcasts we watched were from others in our industry or business coach style individuals, but also from general people that just had a positive outlook on not only business, but life in general. We're excited to bring this to you each week at 4 p.m. on Thursdays. We will also have the ability in many of the presentations for you, the general public, to ask questions of our guests. So without further ado, let's get to our guest today. And our guest this week is a woman of many talents, a true visionary in her entrepreneurial life, as well as holding down a difficult full-time job. Did you know that Minnesota is home to the oldest standing women's professional football team in the country? Tackle football, not soccer, the real stuff. Neither did I until a few years ago. So today our special guest is representing her husband and herself, Mr. and Mrs. James and Laura Brown, the owners of the Minnesota Vixen and Vixen by Design. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Is James lurking in the background somewhere, or is he going to log in?
He is technically working from home right now, so he's logged in from home. We'll see if we can get him in a little bit later.
All right. Well, I can't wait to pick your brain today, as this has been one of my favorite scheduled episodes that we had booked here in 2020. So let's get started.
All right.
You're a busy lady, but tell everyone a little bit more background on both the Vixen and Vixen by Design.
Well, the Vixen was around long before me. They started, like you said, in 1999. They're the longest continuously running women's football team. And like you said, when you say football, it's real football, 11 on 11, outdoor, NFL-style tackle football. It was an amazing group. I became aware of it in their 15th year of existence, and I thought it was a really neat thing. I myself was, I think fast approaching 40 years of age. So I kind of thought my football years were behind me. And I was encouraged, though, to come to some of the events that they had. So the Vixen actually had an open practice. So I decided, well, that'd be fun for me as a woman to finally be able to run some football drills. I showed up and I got hooked. I ended up playing a couple seasons for the Vixen, but afterwards I really appreciated what the Vixen brought to me in my life and what it was doing for so many of these women, providing an opportunity to play tackle football on a level that I've never seen before. So I really wanted to get involved on the business side of things, and it opened up and I ended up acquiring the team. Really proud of it. The team's grown a lot. We've gone from like 20 some players on our roster to over 60 women. We usually have, well over 100 women that try out for the team every year, and it just keeps growing by leaps and bounds. And so this would have been our 8th season. 2020 would have been our 8th season as owner-operators. I kind of came home and told my husband that we were acquiring a football team. So
he was probably like, the Vikings, yeah.
No. He was like, what? He's a big hockey guy. He was like, I've heard of this thing, football, but most wives come home with a new pair of shoes. You're coming home telling me we're going to run a football team. And I was like, yeah, we're going to run. And he's kind of like, all right, you do your thing. And since then, he's just really fell in love with doing it. The people, the events and things like that. Huge learning curve for him to learn about the game. But like I said, he was a huge hockey guy. So he's been into sports his whole life. And so it was a pretty easy transition for him.
And what about Vixen by Design? Tell us a little bit about that.
Vixen by Design is a little different. When I started running the football team, I was really frustrated with a lot of the prices of uniforms, T-shirts, anything that we wanted to do. So my sister kind of works in the industry, and we came up with a little brainchild of, kind of spinning off our own company, with one of the big things being able to do better fundraising for the Vixen.
Sure.
And so that's one thing that we really work with. We help a lot of like sports teams either get reasonably priced merchandise or help them do fundraisers. We've also worked with some employers to get, jackets and things like that for their employees. And so it's been something nice that we kind of offer on the side. But the thing that I really, really enjoy about doing it, you guys kind of do the same thing with your company.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a lot of gratification in seeing a finished product, something that you made.
Sure.
Is really great. And I also like the aspect that we're also helping people. We worked with like I.C.E basketball last year to get them, a really high quality shirt with a great design inexpensively so they could sell it to raise funds for their program. So it's always fun to help people on that kind of level.
Well, and one of your biggest fundraisers is that you've been set up at the Minnesota State Fair the last, I don't even know how many years. And sadly this year you're not going to be able to do that thanks to COVID, but hopefully you're able to still reach the masses somehow and get that out there. And I know your season, just like the SPFL season that I'm the commissioner, it's certainly been interrupted and kind of having to be forced to take that year off. But being the true entrepreneur that you are, you also hold down a full-time job as a clinical pharmacist in the ER of one of the top facilities in Minnesota, if I'm correct.
Yes, that is correct. Yep.
Okay. Did that process of schooling and such make you a better business owner, or are they so different that it really has no effect?
Well, my path to becoming a clinical pharmacist and working in an emergency room was really different. I finished pharmacy school right around that 40th birthday. As you can see, my 30s, it was a huge change in my life for me. Before that, I actually did work in business. I actually, when I was going through school the first time, as a more traditional, young in my 20s, I was going to school, thought maybe I'd go into teaching because, again, you'll see a common theme that I like helping people. And so, it's if you don't give back to others, how can you expect to get anything in return? And helping others is one way that, just fulfills me as a person. So anyways, I was this was back in like the 90s, early 90s when we had the recession. So I started working in fast food and did really well there, and actually ended up kind of being working my way up to production leader, assistant manager, general manager, and all the way up to like being involved in hiring and firing and training managers and doing all that kind of stuff. So I got a lot of my business background I actually got from running a fast food restaurant, which I think a lot of people, they hear you work in fast food and they kind of, whatever, and kind of dismiss it. But I think a lot of those jobs that we can get our young teens, young adults into, it's a great way for them to get more exposure. I would have never picked business for myself. When I think of business, I think of a room with 100 cubicles, everybody sitting there quietly, doing their little TPS reports, right? TPS cover sheet. That's what I think of business. So I was like, no, whatever I do, I don't want to go into business anytime in my life. I never really considered like owning my own small business, or the fact that there are so many businesses out there that work with people one-on-one. It's not all this huge corporate America. There's a lot of businesses out there that have 50 to 100 employees, and you have that personal experience with your employer and your coworkers. And so, but I do have to give a lot of my business background so that, that fast food experience that I had. I went on to school then. I left working for there because I did want to get into healthcare, something that I always had kind of wanted to do. It was between teaching and going into healthcare. My husband was great in supporting me with the career change then. But they are actually really different, very different. In the ER, I'm on the code team. So I'm working on overdoses, heart attacks, traumas, strokes, anything like that is really what I'm involved in. So, a little bit of an adrenaline rush that you might say that you get with sports.
Yeah.
But I don't really know. They didn't give us a lot of business background in pharmacy school.
What was this is a side question that but I thought of it as you were talking. What was more shocking to James when you came home and said, I want to go to school to be a clinical pharmacist, or I want to we're buying the Minnesota Vixen. Which one was
Oh,
probably more encouraging, but yet shocking to him?
definitely the football team. Even when I came home and told him I was going to play football, the first thing he said is, "You're going to blow out an E," which he was right. I did. So, well worth the experience, though, I'd say.
Hopefully he didn't. Hopefully he didn't walk around saying, "I told you so."
Well, there might have. We're married. There was a little bit of that. Come on.
Exactly.
But I think at that point in his life, I'd already achieved a lot in the restaurant industry. It is a very hard industry on you. You're working every weekend. You're a lot of long hours. There's a lot of turnover in your fellow employees. So he knew I'd been searching for something, and he actually works out of college, so we got a little bit of a tuition discount. So he kept encouraging me, take a look at classes, see what you want to do. And once I came home with that, he was very supportive. So
awesome. What was the inspiration behind each of your three hats? And of course, by three hats, I mean Minnesota Vixen, Vixen by Design, and then as well as a pharmacist, because obviously the fourth one and most important is being a wife.
Yep.
James is obviously your inspiration there, but what about the other three?
The Vixen by Design I touched on a little bit already is the fact that, I was a little frustrated with so many apparel companies out there and not finding like the prices that I wanted or things like that. So that one really came out of a need, I think, from the Vixen, and wanting to help others. The Vixen was just, like I said, I got involved with the Vixen as a player. I appreciated the opportunity that they gave me so much to play. And so when I started playing, I was a new pharmacist, so they really didn't know I had a business background. So I went to them and said, "Hey, this has been a fantastic experience that you've given me. I want to give back to the organization." And honestly, at that point, I thought, well, maybe I'll run a fundraiser or two. I wasn't thinking that I would become the owner and end up running all the operations. But I knew I had this business background, and I knew I could give back a lot to the organization that gave to me. I'm really into continuous improvement. Probably my biggest weak point is starting something from scratch. If you say build a shed, I just stand there and stare at the empty space. I don't know what to do. It's very overwhelming to me to build something from scratch. But if you give me a shed and say make it better, that's when I get really excited. I said, well, we can switch out this window here. I can replace the hinges. We can paint it. We can put a new roof. And so I really like the process of continuous improvement. So for me, coming into the Vixen, I saw what it could be. I saw how we could grow it over the next 5 years. And I saw that there was just so many little things that we could do to help gain us more exposure so that more people in the state of Minnesota and around the country would know us. I saw little things that we could do that would make it a better experience for the player so that they would appreciate it. And we could bond better as teammates. Well, probably the only thing I didn't really see is what we could do on the field. I knew a lot about football, but maybe I wasn't like, oh, we need to run this kind of defense or schemes like that.
Right.
Our coaches have always been great at that. I've kind of always left that up to the coaches and kind of just taking care of the operations side a little bit. And then pharmacy, I was kind of an anatomy nut when I was younger. I actually had an anatomy coloring book when I was a kid that I used to color in, and I really liked anatomy, physiology, and all of the health sciences. So I kind of had always kept in mind that I wanted to, go into the health sciences field, which, for most people, you're like, well, nurse or doctor, which one?
Right.
And neither one of them really appealed to me. So it took many, many years until someone said, well, you should look at pharmacy. I'm thinking about going to pharmacy school. This is what I want to do. And I kind of, I don't want to work at Walgreens. I don't want to stand behind a counter all day. Right. I don't want to memorize a bunch of facts and
a million drugs. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't want to memorize a million drugs so I can count by fives, put pills in a bottle and slap a label on it. Right. That's right. The stereotype of pharmacy. And she said, no. You need to go down to the U of M. They're having a fall preview day and see what they're all about. So I said, okay, fine, I'll go. So I went down there. Oh, and she told me how much they make. Because at the time, I was making a decent salary, and I thought, well, I can't quit my job and go back and take something that's like completely financially irresponsible. So a little bit of the motivation originally there was part of the salary and how long the school was, I'll be honest with it. But I went down to the U of M And my eyes were just opened that there's this whole other world of pharmacy. And there's jobs like what I do right now. I go in, I'm there. I solely work in the emergency department. I'm stationed down there. When the critical patients come in, I'm in the room, I'm at the bedside. I get to help educate patients, whether it's training them how to give themselves shots or use an inhaler. I'm helping the doctors when we have patients coming with overdoses. What can we do for an antidote? How long do we have to watch a patient? So I had no idea that there's this whole other realm of other things that pharmacists could do out there. And once I kind of got exposed to that, I kind of got hooked.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can definitely, you said to a little bit about it earlier, the adrenaline rush. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
the ER is, obviously with my past career as a paramedic, the ER is kind of a pretty good action. And if you're in there, I can only imagine from the pharmacist standpoint, you're reacting very quickly to everything that's going on.
Exactly.
It's not, and I always refer to it as controlled chaos. It's we go through all that training and everything so that we can learn how to control the chaos going on around us when everybody else is losing their mind. So,
yep, that's a very great way of putting it.
A day in your life is a busy one. Who inspired you the most up to this point in life and career, and what did you learn from them?
Probably the person that first pops in my head, and often when I get a question like this, is I think of my father. Growing up, he was just one of these, a stand-up, member of the community, the type of guy that, when he gave you his word, that was good. A handshake was good enough. You don't need contracts. If you tell someone you'll do something, you follow through with it. And very proud to walk around with our last name within our community and knowing that we were, people that were always willing to help somebody else and that we were a solid member of that community. And I think it gave me a good base of integrity. When a lot of people think integrity, they think like, okay, you tell the truth, you don't lie. I think it's a little bit beyond that. It's you don't lie to yourself. You don't make a lot of excuses for yourself. You always try your best. And I think that came out across to me a lot when I was a kid in sports. When you have to run the laps, you're not cutting the corners. When you have to run lines, you're touching the line. You're always putting 100% into everything that you do. You might fall short sometimes. I've always been extremely competitive. James, my husband, can tell you that. I'm very competitive, but I don't mind losing if I do my best and the other person's just better than me. And I think there's a lot of good traits like that I learned growing up in sports. And then also things that I learned like that from watching my father, the fact that, growing up, he had 2 jobs and he worked to provide the family, and never complained about it. And it didn't matter what project he might be doing around the house or something. He made sure that he did a quality job. And if he told you he was going to be there or do something, that you knew you could count on it.
Awesome. I've obviously gotten to meet you and James this past year, and the passion that you have for the Vixen is really unmatched. What do you do as a couple to keep your collaboration on point, both for business and as well as your marriage? Because let's face it, mine's sitting about 80 feet that way, and
Yep.
sometimes the marriage thing and business doesn't always mix the best.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's running a business while you're married and running it together is not something that I would probably recommend for a lot of people. I've had a lot of people come and tell me when they find out my husband and I run a business together that, ooh, you guys better be careful. And they get concerned for us. We've actually done really well with it. And it's actually brought us closer together. There are certain phrases that we have that we can use to check each other. So if someone's getting a little too crazy or getting a little upset, and things like that, we can kind of toss things out there. So I think that's important. I think we also try to sometimes just carve away things because it's really easy if you go out for a nice dinner together to start talking business.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's probably been our hardest challenge, is because we spend time together and we end up talking about, these people or products or something that we're going to do business wise. And so sometimes we have to remind ourselves that, hey, we're more than just our business. And so that's something we actually have to work very hard on. But I think the thing that's been fun for us is what you do for a living is such a huge part of your life.
Correct.
And having your spouse see into that window, having them see what gets you excited, what drives you, and that you can start sharing ideas back and forth and that you can build something together really has helped us like connect on another level. And I think it's been actually really good for us. If I had been putting all this time into building my business and he wasn't part of it, I think it would actually put more strain on the marriage, because then it would be like, well, where are you again?
Right. Yeah. He wouldn't necessarily understand why you're staying up until 2 o'clock in the morning to work on something, or why
Exactly.
you have to be gone for the third night in a row to go and meet with a customer, or to football practice or something along those lines. And
Yep.
it's funny you said that you have like keywords. Tanya and I do too. You're
Yeah.
fired. We
You're fired.
we fire each
That's
other
a
on
pretty
a
good
very
one.
regular basis.
Yep.
And the rules are you're fired, but you still have to finish out your shift and you have to show up the next day. So
Okay.
that's how we do it. And trust me, at the Pigskin Classic, where we really kind of met, you and James, we've fired each other throughout the day a number of times at the Pigskin. So
Yeah.
uh,
My favorite is at one point we kind of decided we should have titles, instead of just whatever owner. So I came up with I'm president and he's vice president,
oh, there you
which
go.
which works very well for us. And so I get my vice presidential reminders all the time. Is what he says. I just have another vice presidential reminder for you that you need to bring in. You need to put the groceries away, or vice presidential reminder to do some lawn, or whatever it is, business or home wise. So
I can see that getting used in our household probably starting tonight. As a woman, young women, I imagine, look up to you and your players with aspirations of their own.
yeah.
What kind of life lesson have you learned in life that you hope to pass on to those young women and even your players?
I think, gosh, that's a really big one. There's been a lot of life lessons that I've had over life. Um, I think that you don't have to be perfect. We have a sign in our house that life is wonderful, and we say it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be wonderful. Because sometimes with projects, I can really get in there and just want to keep tweaking it until I think it's perfect, and we're just like, it's wonderful. You can walk away. So I think learning that you don't have to do everything perfect. You don't have to do everything right the first time. Life is really about this amazing journey and not really about your destination. It's going to take you a lot of places you're never going to expect. You're going to have chances maybe to do things over. Not that you should blow them off in the first place, but I think we have a son actually who is 27 years old now, and he just got laid off with COVID. It's unfortunate, but I'm happy to say that he's approaching this in a pretty positive manner. He's like, you know what? I'm 27. I got a lot of my life left in front of me. I can switch careers. There's so much I can do. And so I think a lot of people just get tied down into what they think that life is supposed to have to be. I have to graduate high school, I go to college, I get a good job, I get married, I have kids, I buy a car, I buy a house, and that goes forward. And there's so many of us that don't follow that path. And we get sometimes thinking that that is the only path, and we get more focused on the end part of that path versus the journey. If you're going to buy a house, have fun. Take your
Right.
time buying your house. Look around. You don't have to have a house. I mean, well, you have to have someplace to sleep tonight, right? But
Right.
if you have to rent another year, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Do things at your own pace, your own schedule, and things will happen for you.
And it's interesting that you mentioned your son at age 27. That's our oldest boy is 27, and he just got out of the military in November, and was working for Taylor Corp.
Okay.
And unfortunately got laid off here with the
Yeah.
COVID. And he just started his next chapter in life. I mean, he's still waiting to go back to Taylor Corp. They plan on bringing him back in off a furlough at some point. But he started flight school to get his private
Wow.
pilot's license on Wednesday, and he called us Wednesday afternoon. He's like, I can't believe it. I was on the controls like right away, and I'm like, excuse me, there's no classroom portion to this, and so it was very very encouraging to hear him. Much like you were describing your son, it was very encouraging to hear him excited about something that he's now got a passion to do.
Yeah.
And obviously his goal somewhere down the road is to be a commercial airline pilot, and so we're rooting for him, that's for sure. So I always call this my quick hitter section of the interviews. Proudest moments and proudest moment in your marriage.
Oh, really? Proudest moment of my marriage. That's hard. I think, you know what? I'd have to say my proudest moment of my marriage is just the fact that we get up and sit together on the patio every morning.
Okay.
And just look at each other. And when we talk to each other, just look each other in the eye and smile. And that's probably what I'm proudest of in our marriage.
Okay. Proudest moment in healthcare.
There's been a couple times where I've been on a code team, and that basically means someone's heart stopped, and we've been in there working on it. And I've been involved in a couple of those where we were actually able to make a difference in somebody's life, bring that person back around, and watch them walk out of the hospital in a couple of weeks with their family, and that's amazing.
Proudest moment in business, just kind of in general.
I would say my proudest moment in business in general is I actually just got a really great email from one of our players who really talked about what the team meant to her in her life, how she had been a former athlete and gotten away with it, away from being an athlete, and kind of always felt like that had been a little bit of a failure in her life, and being back involved in the Vixen opened that back up for her, and how appreciative she was and everything that gave to her and fulfilled in her life. And I think that was one of the moments when I shook my head and was like, yeah, this is why we do this. This is why we run this team.
Yep. This is the moment what's the word? You said it earlier, but I don't think that's the right word. Gratification or vindication. There we go. Yeah, the vindication of why you work long hours and all that kind of stuff. So, and then proudest moment in the Vixen by Design side of it.
The Vixen by Design. That one has still such a short history in it. Trying to think. I think, gosh, that one's hard because we're really just starting getting off on that. I think my proudest moment with that though is just the fact that I'm doing it. The fact that my sister and I are doing this together, and that we actually sat down and said, let's make this happen. And it's because we talked about it for a long time. We probably talked about it for over, I mean, not an extremely long time, but perhaps like a year and a half, or longer. We'd always talked about doing it. And then finally we said, let's do it. And I just remember, logging into that website and filing the name and everything like that. And that was probably the proudest moment there. Just such a good feeling knowing that we're actually taking that step forward.
Was your sister part of the industry prior to this, or?
Yeah, she's been a kind of a great advisor to me on stuff like that. And she does work in the industry. So she's not, I consider her like, basically my biggest advisor and biggest fan when I go with running this.
Okay. Obviously you get great encouragement from James and others. What has been different in life that you never imagined when you were, say, 17 plus?
Yeah. When
because you're not an adult yet, you're still a teenager.
Well, I say an adult, I'm just not done growing yet. Yeah, I kind of, when I was 17, I wasn't even sure I wanted to have kids. I thought I would probably be maybe traveling a lot more around the world. And I've had some great opportunities to take a lot of great trips and so forth, and been involved in things overseas. But I think by now I thought for sure I'd be living overseas. I've always loved a lot of cultures, foods, languages, anything that has to do with like other places around the world, even world history. And so I think when I was young, I just thought there's no way I'll be living in a suburb in Minnesota. And so I think that's probably been the biggest shock to me, that, that I really love living here. James and I still talk about maybe moving out of the country at some point, and I still talk about maybe trying to do some more travel. I've been fortunate enough to do quite a bit of travel in my lifetime, but I think that's probably the one thing that I just thought there's no way,
Well, and you mentioned cultures. I remember at the Pigskin Classic last year getting to talk to some of your players, and I don't I want to say the one girl was maybe from Iceland or Sweden or something
Yes.
like that,
Yep.
and I
We have
was
one
just like,
player.
"Holy crap! How did you find out about this?" And she's like, "I didn't know anything about football. I just got invited, and I love it."
Yep.
And so it's very uh, you do on the football side of this, you do get to learn or meet or interact with so many different personalities and, like
Hmm.
you said, cultures. I think the culture thing for you with the Vixen is a lot more prominent than necessarily the culture thing with, say, a men's team. Um, Not that it isn't there, but I mean, in order for you to put together a women's football team, you have to pull from a pretty wide spectrum to be able to build that team. Whereas it seems like the men, it's like uh, 5, 10 guys that played together, played with each other in high school, and they each know 2 or 3 guys, and boom, all of a sudden you got the team. But
Yep.
how would you like to be remembered?
Mostly as somebody that people could really count on, somebody that had a lot of integrity, a lot of those things that I talk about that were important values that I learned as a kid: hardworking, reliable, trustworthy, and probably just someone that really loved to hang out with their husband. He's really just my best friend.
You kind of alluded to this one a little bit ago. Again, you do a lot. Who are you collaborating with on a regular basis for the businesses, and what do you find is your best method?
Um, well, we work a little bit with like Vikings Women, which is the arm of the Vikings that's helping promote football with their female fans. And right now, we are actually going to be running a 5K with her next play. There's a lot of local organizations and things like that that we support. Um, Really, a lot of the stuff I like to do to collaborate is it's fun getting together with people and they start talking about their ideas. I sat down with Vikings Women last year and we kind of talked about what they're trying to do, some things that the Vixen are trying to do, and that brainstorming session back and forth and coming up with ideas that can be a win for each organization, a win-win, and how we can really support each other and how we can really grow with each other. Even working with like Town Square Television, there are a local community television station here, and we went to them several years ago, you know, 8 years ago, no, 7 years ago, our second year that we own the team, and convinced them to come out and broadcast the Vixen games on local TV. And they came out and they were, I think, a little skeptical at first, but it's grown into this, great relationship where we end up being, one of their top programs that they have now. And so it's always fun to talk with them about what are they doing to grow their business. How can we help with that? How can we fit in? How can they support us and things like that? And so um, for me, a lot of collaboration just comes across with like brainstorming a lot is a lot of fun because you don't always see business the same way that somebody else does. So when you can sit down and talk to that person about how they perceive your business or things that they can actually bring to light with your business, sometimes it's just eye opening when you can see your business through somebody else's eyes. Just that, and really how else you can support each other.
What's the future for Laura Brown and the Vixen brand?
That I really don't know. The Vixen will be here forever. I can tell you that. The Vixen were around many years before me, and the Vixen will be around probably many years after me. I don't know if I really see us going anywhere soon with the Vixen. Um, it's been fun, and as long as we keep seeing that there's a way that we can improve and make a continuous improvement with the team, will be there. I think for women's tackle football, I think women's football is kind of hot right now. There's obviously a lot of women that are getting into coaching in the NFL. Several of them have come from the WFA, which is our league, has come from our pipeline. The Vixen themselves, we're starting to produce more female coaches and getting those in our pipeline just within our team, which is really great. I think women's football is going to continue to grow over the years. I don't know if women's football really has the same place like competing with the NFL. I do think, though, here in town, when we look at like we have the Minnesota Twins and we have the St. Paul Saints. Well, if the Minnesota Twins are supposed to be the top level performance, why would you ever go to a St. Paul Saints game? Why do they exist? Well, you go to a St. Paul Saints game because, they're so much fun. They're interactive, they're family friendly. And so I think for women's football, I would love to see the tackle program continue to grow, continue to be competitive, but turn it into a family-friendly, exciting environment where you can go to. The kids can play games. It can be affordable. Everybody can watch a high-quality football game go on that night, and just be a great experience and something that we can add to the community. So I think women's football can get there. I think there's a lot of interest in women. I think it will continue to grow. For myself, I really don't know what the future holds. This is not exactly what I ever thought I would be. James and I talk sometimes about maybe buying a property out of the country, traveling more. I always am kicking around the idea of going back to school and maybe getting another degree. So we'll see. We'll see. I just take it one day at a time, and if something interests me, then I start pursuing it.
Awesome. What words of wisdom do you want to pass down to those little baby girls and baby boys that are being born today when they Wikipedia search your name? Because if you're not on Wikipedia, I think you're going to be there before too long.
Yeah. I guess the biggest thing that I have to pass down is just, hard work, perseverance. Don't give up. You're going to get there where you want to in life. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be big curves in the road. Very seldom in life is anything a straight shot to get anywhere. And so enjoy the ride, enjoy the process of getting there, and just don't ever give up on yourself. I've had a lot of setbacks in life. I didn't finish pharmacy school until right around my 40th birthday. I didn't start playing football until around my 40th birthday. If you were doing this interview with me 15 years ago, my life looked completely different. And you have a lot of time to get things done in your life. There's not a lot of rush. If there's something you want to pursue it. Do things on your own timeline, and don't let anybody else force anything down on you. Sometimes when I talk to young people in their early 20s, they're almost apologetic because they haven't found their career yet. And I tell them, don't worry about it. I said, I didn't know I wanted to be a pharmacist till I was well into my 30s, and didn't graduate pharmacy school till I was 40s. Didn't find football until I was 40. So you got a lot of time to get things done.
Last question.
Yeah.
Who's your biggest cheerleader in life and business, and why?
That just have to be my husband and son. James is phenomenal, and so is my son. They're the two people that when something happens, I can't wait to text them and let them know. James has this wonderful ability about him where he's a very intelligent guy, and he knows when I need a hug or when I need a kick in the butt. And if you can find the person that knows the difference and can read you, and they know to tell you to, stop being a baby, get up there and go do what you need to do, versus when you just kind of need that hug and you just need an empathetic ear. And I just think he's probably been my biggest cheerleader. My son's right there. He's, like I said, he's 27, but I can't wait I send him pictures and let him know the successes that we have in our life. And it's just great to be able to share that with him. We have a great relationship with our adult son. We did when he was a kid too, but it's gotten better with age, actually.
Well, Laura, Tanya, and I want to thank you for being our guest today, and tell us real quick, where can we follow the Vixen at? What's like the top couple places to follow the Vixen?
If you're looking for a lot of the dynamic stuff, things that's coming up, activities that we're doing, probably Facebook is the best place. Minnesota Vixen Women's Football on Facebook. Of course, we always have our website, mnvixen.com. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at mn_vixen. We appreciate the follows. It's something that people can do to help support women's football really easily. Just follow us on social media and give us some likes.
Well, in 2021, I sure hope that we not only see you back on the field, but we hopefully see you at the state fair again. And we encourage everyone to check out the Vixen. You can find some of their old game footage online and things like that. So again, thank you for being on, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Jay. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next week on the show, we will have Allison Banholzer from the East Coast Girls, is what I have them like to call them. And Allison has a great past that we'll learn how life and business have gone for her. On behalf of both Tanya and I, we'd like to thank our viewers who tuned in to check out this ICE thing that we've got going on. And we hope that you found the message of inspiration, collaboration, and encouragement to be useful both in your personal and professional life each day. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.